Joining me today this evening in Mumbai is someone whose characters have actually created a sharp divide in this country over the last decade and a half. KaranJohar is one of the most known and talked about film producers and directors in India. His upcoming film, Brahmastra, has also created a sharp divide in this country over social media, but he's willing to talk about many more such things in this interview with me on The New Indian. Welcome to this show, Mr. Johar. It's actually fabulous knowing you and meeting you here in flesh. All these years I have actually seen you with a very ringside view. I feel pleasure to have you on this show, and I also feel with a sense of gratification that I'm going to interview you in a year when India is celebrating the 75th anniversary of its independence. I'd actually begin this interview by asking you, what is the essence of freedom and independence to you?
I have a lot of pride when I say I'm Indian because we have such a rich heritage, such an absolutely fantastic cultural heritage that we are all so proud of. If you just see the fabric of our nation, which has always been so beautifully, embedded in our culture. Ever since I was young, my father, I remember, used to wake up in the morning and have a prayer where it was mainly a prayer of gratitude, where he used to thank the good Lord for giving us, a meal on the table, a job to go to, a happy, healthy, peaceful family. I woke up to his prayer every morning, and for me, that was the India that I grew up in. Seeing my father in absolute prayer and meditation. Then the India I grew up in was the India that he took me to with his family in Delhi. We used to have a house in Nizamuddin, in Delhi, in West Delhi. I still remember the address, it's G65 Nizamuddin West. My Mataji, Dadi, is where I used to go to. For me, that India was celebrating every festival with my father's family.
This was which year?
I'm talking about 70s. 75, 76, right? Till my Dadi was alive. She passed away in 84. Up to that point, it was always told to me that whether it's Holi or Diwali, everything was celebrated in our way. I still remember with my father going to the Gurdwara. My mother Sindhi, my father Punjabi, but both of them had the Gurdwara in common, Guru Nanak in common. Going to the Langar was one of my other experiences of being Indian, going and there was, my nani grew up in a building that had a Gurdwara in the building, in a building called Sham Nivas in Mumbai.
Right.
So every year at the Langar.
So did they speak chaste Punjabi?
My father spoke fluent Punjabi, like absolutely. I understand Punjabi and Sindhi. Unfortunately, being a Mumbai born and brought up boy, I never spoke either, but I understand both fluently. But my father spoke complete, like wonderful Punjabi. मैं बिल्कुल समझ सकता हूँ आपको, लेकिन पंजाबी में गल नहीं कर पाऊँगा. But I've grown up with Punjabi and Sindhi in the house.
I've lived in Punjab and covered Punjab, and it's a state which is very close to my heart. I can speak. Actually, I'm a polyglot, so I can speak.
I know, you just did, and you spoke fantastically.
Oh, thank you so
and
much.
I actually feel very bad. I regret when I speak to many. I have lots of friends, who speak fluent Punjabi. In fact, I always tell Vicky Kaushal, I'm like, can you give me like less? He speaks it so beautifully.
Correct.
And I'm like, it's such a beautiful language, the music. And my father used to, my father, I have to say, was not a very good singer.
Right.
But he still sang songs that he grew up hearing, in his years.
Right.
My father was born and brought up in Simla, then moved to Delhi, and was very much part of the partition
Right.
of India. He and my family had to move, from Simla, they moved then to Delhi. My mother was actually born and brought up in Karachi. And then moved in 47 because Sindh at that time,
Right.
and at 47 she and my Nana and Nani moved from there to Kanpur.
Right.
So my mother, though Sindhi, has grown up in the north of India as well. As I said, so we've had a very, and I'm the only child. We discussed before the interview, so I
Right.
and they say an only child is a lonely child. But I was very blessed to have like such a great relationship with my parents that I somehow never grew up feeling the absence of a sibling.
Very interesting. Disclosure that I was personally not aware of the fact that you had a Punjabi childhood where you were exposed to that culture as well, going to Gurdwaras and all.
Yes.
The reason I'm asking this question is that you come from a film fraternity where you have interacted with various religions at times. Star cast comes from various religious backgrounds and also regional as well. How difficult it was initially for you to get a break in this industry, considering the fact there was a tight grip of only the Khans in this industry by the time when you were entering into the space where you wanted to build your own star cast. And so how difficult it was to interact with a different genre and also sort of understand the different cultures at that time.
You know, the film industry has always been the most secular place in the world, and I was grown up and raised to be told that. I never even had such feelings or thoughts. Like, it was not difficult in that respect. What was difficult is that my father was going through a very tough time professionally before I made my first film. Many of his films had failed.
Such as?
Well, they were all actually, barring his first film Dostana, which released in 1980.
Right.
His second film was a film called Dunia with Dilip Kumar. His third film was a film called which failed. A film called Muqaddar Ka Faisla, directed by Prakash Mehra with Rajkumar, which failed.
Ji.
Then a very, very expensive film and a very respected cult film today, Agnipath with Mr. Bachchan, directed by Mukul Nandan, which was a box office failure.
Right.
Then he made a film called Gumrah with Sri Devi with Bhatt Saab, which didn't work. And
Right.
then Duplicate with Shah Rukh, with Bhatt Saab again, which didn't work.
Right.
So we had heavy loans because in those days there weren't studios. There were lots of, you had to sometimes, I remember like my mom had to actually sell my nani's flat in the same building that I talked to you about where I used to go as a child. No, my nani was at Sham Niwas, where the Gurdwara was. And I remember she had to sell it because when we released the Muqaddar Ka Faisla in 1987 it was, the film was such a colossal disaster.
Right.
That at that time my father had taken loans from financiers and he had to pay them off. And had to sell and my mother of course never said anything, but my father was heartbroken that my nani's flat had to be sold. So when I entered the industry and I spoke about my desire to make movies and be a filmmaker, my father knew, and I remember telling him that, Papa, we've been through tough times, and if you feel I shouldn't do this, and maybe this is not the economically right time to make a film, please tell me. And he was like, at that time he said, मैंने सबके लिए किया है, मैंने बड़ी बड़ी फिल्में बनाई हैं, फिल्में नहीं चली हैं. अगर उनके लिए मैंने बनाया होता तो मैं अपने बेटे के लिए क्यों नहीं बनाऊंगा? हम जो चाहे कर लेंगे, बस तू दिल से पिक्चर बना, और दिल से तू बना, और अगर दिल से बनाएगा ना तो पिक्चर चली जाएगी. So for my challenge, Rohan, was not anything to do with any of the fabric at that time of the industry. It was all very inclusive and everyone was very welcoming, but I had a big pressure of delivering a successful film as my
and
first
the heavy
film.
debt on your
And we had and the very same year Duplicate had flopped. In May 1998 Duplicate had released and not done well. Many distributors had walked out of our film, but it was Mr. Yash Chopra, and God bless his soul, and he is my guru in so many ways, took charge of the film's distribution, took charge of India and overseas, and Adi remains my mentor and guide and best friend and brother for life. And Yash Uncle, my guru, like literally, I always feel like his and the Yashraj school has been my institution of learning. And I remember when Kuch Kuch Hota Hai released, and my father's voice, at that time on the phone, जब distributor ने phone करके कहा कि Monday बहुत solid है, strong है, आपकी picture super hit है. And I remember he had tears rolling down his face because he hadn't heard those words in over 2 decades. He hadn't heard कि picture मेरी चल गई है, हम actually safe रहेंगे, हम we were in a where we were staying. It was like he always had a desire that we'd move to a larger house.
आप उस समय कहाँ रहते थे?
हम actually town में रहते थे, लेकिन we were in a 2-bedroom flat there in town, and we were on rent actually for the longest time. We only in the last 2 years before, 3, mummy, papa and me, and we moved to our first house in Bandra. कुछ होता के बाद we came. So I mean, आज जब बातें होती हैं about ये nepotism culture.
After that you have changed.
Just one more flat. I've basically lived in 3 homes in all my life. हाँ, पहले वो जिस घर में मैं पला बड़ा था, जो टाउन में था, then I went to a building यही यूनियन पार्क में पाली हिल में, उसी के सामने अभी मैं अपने बच्चे और माँ के साथ रहता हूँ.
जिस तरीके से आमिर खान की मूवी आई, do you really think that boycott campaigns affect the box office performance of any movie, or for that matter, let's say even brahmastra? क्योंकि ट्विटर पे एक outrage ब्रह्मास्त्र के खिलाफ में भी हुई.
So I mean, just to say that we've had a 7-year journey on brahmastra. Me, Alia, Ranbir, put us all aside. It's Ayan Mukherjee, who's put his entire life into this film. It's his baby all the way. The massive scale film that it is, and we are very, very grateful to Disney, who have actually, backed our film from the very first day. But it's Ayan Mukherjee's labor of love. And so when people are asking me these questions, I'm like, I feel one boy who's tried to really truly make a film deeply embedded in our mythology, trying to tell a story that can make every Indian so proud of what he has tried to achieve. And when you see this film, I assure you, you will be very proud that we as Indian film, as an Indian filmmaker, Ayan Mukherjee has pushed the bar, raised the standard, tried his level best so that we can walk the talk with everyone in the rest of the world. He's worked relentlessly for 10 years and then 7 years actually on ground. Now, how can we not focus on only the positive? And that's all I want to do. To answer your question, I want to just ask everybody to just focus on the positive and the hard work, labor that boy, blood, sweat and tears into each and every frame. Last night I was sitting with him at the final mix and I saw him just each frame, to the tone of it, the color of it. He was sitting not wanting to let go because we have a delivery to give. Our film's releasing 5 days away. And I've just seen this boy. A lot of filmmakers in these 10 years may have bought homes and houses and cars, lived a life, produced multiple films, made so much money. That boy hasn't made any money, barring the money that was given to him due as a filmmaker for Brahmastra. He is literally living the same life that he was 10 years ago. All he wanted was to put his heart, soul and passion into creating something that can make our wonderful great nation proud. I only want to, Rohan, at this juncture, focus on that.
Absolutely.
And I feel if there is anything, that if input has to equal output, then we are in for a huge, beautiful ride ahead.
Of course, Mr. Johar, you talked about the fact that whether there is outrage or not, sentiments of any person should never be hurt. And if they have been hurt either inadvertently or by some design which you are not aware of, or which I am not aware of, which someone is not aware of, you must always apologize with a sense of compunction. And when that happens, movies should always get the good phenomenal response, which on the basis of merit. Now, this movie which I am talking to you about, Brahmastra, you said that it's shot in beautiful locales of Varanasi, which is also Prime Minister Narendra Modi's constituency. So, was there also by design or not sort of to win over the Hindus again? Is there an attempt? And how different or how close you feel to this religion as a proud Hindu or as a proud Punjabi?
I feel Varanasi is a very important part of the film, the narrative, and it was always in Ayan's vision a decade ago. When I first heard this story in 2013, I remember. This is in 2013, and I repeat the year so that you know it was way before.
Prime Minister.
Yes, yeah. It was always in the narrative. There was no, it was just very beautifully embedded into the fabric of the narrative. Ayan is an extremely God-fearing religious. As you know, he and his family are very, very proud, Durga worshippers, because they have, like the father, especially Devu uncle, has a pandal that, for during, the festival time, they have a pandal that they are very big, actively part of, which even Kajal and Rani and all the cousins, go for. So when we speak about, firstly, when we speak about religion and the power of religion, is that we all are people who have been raised with a value system that comes and derives out of our great religion, which is in mainly the respect for elders, respect for our land, and respect for our relationships. Izzat ki baat karte hain. That is what I think this great religion has always taught us. That's how I've been raised. That's how I know Ayan has been raised. We've been taught to kind of, from a very young age, I was taught that elders के यहाँ पाँव छूते हैं और आधा नहीं पूरा. इज्जत कभी आधा नहीं होता, पूरा होता है. So when I touch somebody, an elder's feet, I touch feet. I literally bow down out of respect and reverence. And that's the way we've always been raised. So I feel any religion, for that matter, and we are such a secular nation. But the one thing that I derived from my being and my growing years is respect. That is the one thing. So while Varanasi, to answer your question again, is beautifully embedded and very organically embedded in the fabric, it's added so many blessings, I feel, to us. And it's very strange. And I will tell you a story. It's like almost like we had a calling back to we had shot the film. The sequence, Kesariya, the song that was shot, but the weather was not favorable, and for some reasons we had to go back. And when we went back,
Kesariya was shot twice?
Yes. So the Kesariya, the first version had a different beat. Then we song got changed and adapted because of Ayan and Pritam Da got together. When we went back to the sun, it was almost like the lords were shining over us. The sun was shining beautifully. We got all the support and help from everyone to shoot there, and it just, I felt, added to the blessings of brahmastra.
In fact, songs of the soundtrack of this movie has been so captivating, personally for many people, that it actually captures the essence of what Varanasi is today. Why I'm asking you this question is because just a few months before this movie was scheduled to be released, UP went through polls, and the BJP government under Yogi Adityanath came back to power after a 5-year successful tenure. And the thrust was on religious shrines, including that of Varanasi, which saw a 500-year-old monument like Kashi Vishwanath temple and the Kashi Vishwanath corridor, known as the KVT corridor, being resurrected, which also led to a controversy regarding Gyanvapi mosque, where during that era a mosque was built by the then Emperor, Mughal Emperor, and then that space is now rebuilt by this government, and also it was inaugurated by Honorable Prime Minister. How do you look at the coming of काशी विश्वनाथ, और कितना आपके दिल के करीब हुआ जब आप लोग वहाँ पे गए, तो आपको क्या महसूस हुआ काशी विश्वनाथ देख के?
Unfortunately, मैं जब वो शूट के दौरान मैं देश में था नहीं. I was out of the country, so I was personally not there to seek the blessings. But सबकी experience बहुत खूबसूरत ही रही. गाना इतना खूबसूरत था, और बस काशी विश्वनाथ का जो वातावरण था, it just, I feel, अगर आप जब गाना देखोगे बड़े पर्दे पे, you will get a sense of that feeling of spirituality.
पर आपका जाना नहीं हुआ?
मेरे unfortunately मैं था नहीं देश में, but I do plan to go just to seek the blessings again, and I hope that we go with pride in our hearts post the release of brahmastra.
जी, आपकी प्रधानमंत्री से भी मुलाकात हुई, ऑफ कोर्स पद्मा अवार्ड के दौरान पे भी.
जी.
पीछे उनकी किताब भी रिलीज हुई, मैं वहाँ पे आपसे मिल नहीं पाया, मैं मौजूद था उस विज्ञान भवन में जब आप आए. आप और शायद सिद्धार्थ भी थे वहाँ पे. तो जब वो किताब लॉन्च हुई, इसी से जुड़ा सवाल इसलिए पूछ रहा हूँ क्योंकि प्रधानमंत्री बनारस से आते हैं. आप आई एम श्योर दैट यू फील fortunate that in a year when your movie at such a big budget on Banaras is getting released, you also were honored with the country's top award for you, I mean Padma. तो उसका कितना आपको फख्र आज महसूस होता है, और वो कैसा दौर था जब प्रधानमंत्री से मुलाकात हुई? You have had opportunity to meet him, I think, on more than 3 or 4 occasions in the last 1.5-2 years.
Yes.
On several occasions where you met, I saw your pictures with the Honorable Prime Minister, which were released by him and by you as well.
Yes.
तो वो दौर कैसा था जब आप लोग मिले और किताब पे भी गए और पद्मा जब मिला? तो
बहुत सारी इमोशंस और भावनाओं के बारे में मैं बात करना चाहूँगा. पहला तो ये था कि मैं एक फिल्म के लोकेशन स्काउट पे था.
ठीक है.
जब मुझे कॉल आया फ्रॉम द मिनिस्ट्री कि आपको पद्मा दिया जा रहा है, एंड विल यू एक्सेप्ट? एंड फर्स्टली मेरा फर्स्ट रिएक्शन वाज दैट overwhelmed, and so overwhelmed by it.
You were still rubbing your eyes that
I was like, वाकई you're right, क्योंकि सुबह कॉल आया था मुझे, तो मैं अभी उठ के
एक कॉन्फिडेंशियल होता है, बोला जाता है कि
प्लीज डोंट टेल एनीवन, जब तक वो ऑफिशियली रिलीज ना हो. तो I was so overwhelmed, और मैं उस वक्त देश के बाहर था. I was on a location scout. तो पहला, when I got down, I got very emotional, I got very teary because I thought of my father and how proud he would have been. At this information. My father was such a proud patriot. He was such a proud, like he was everything about an honor. I remember जब पहली बार हमारी फिल्म को नेशनल अवार्ड मिला था, कुछ होता है तो my father was so proud, and for his son to win a Padma award, he would have been over the moon. So I called my mother, and then of course we are a very emotional family. So my mother started crying, I started crying, and it was a very proud moment to.
So where is the roll of honor in your home?
It's in my office. It's in my office.
It's in here.
This is actually another office, our main Dharma production.
Right.
It's framed in my room.
Along with your photograph with the president.
Yes. It's very proudly there. Also at home, my children also know about it. They look at it very often and say, Dada won the Padma Shri. It just makes me feel so proud.
Because of the grand feeling which it was in the
just the emotion of being honored by your country, for the work that you've done. In the entertainment industry, sometimes हम सब काम करते हैं, but आपको जब वो validation मिलती है, जो वो आपको ऑफिशियली मिलता है वो वैलिडेशन, देयर इज नो बेटर, बिगर, स्ट्रॉन्गर, प्राउडर फीलिंग।
प्रधानमंत्री से मुलाकात हुई?
जी हाँ जी, बिल्कुल ही थी, वो सबसे मिले थे उसके बाद, एंड आई हैड द गुड फॉर्च्यून ऑफ एक्चुअली स्पेंडिंग वेरी 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 ऑन फ्यू ओकेजन्स वेरी ब्यूटीफुल टाइम विद द ऑनरेबल प्राइम मिनिस्टर। एक बार ऐसा भी था कि व्हेन आई वेंट विद अ लॉट ऑफ मेंबर्स ऑफ द इंडस्ट्री टू मीट हिम, एंड व्हाट रियली वाज स्ट्रक मी एज समथिंग फैंटास्टिक वाज जब जो भी थे वहाँ सारे जो फिल्म इंडस्ट्री के जो सदस्य गए थे, he had something he knew of every one of them। उनकी लास्ट रिलीज फिल्म क्या होने वाली है। आई रिमेंबर तब वो जब रणबीर कपूर से मिले थे तो उन्होंने चिंटू जी के हेल्थ के बारे में पूछा, जब आलिया से मिले उन्होंने भट्ट साहब के बारे में इंक्वायर किया, व्हेन ही मेट रोहित शेट्टी ही स्पोक अबाउट सिम्बा जो रिलीज हुई थी। सबसे एक कनेक्शन उन्होंने बनाया बाय स्पीकिंग अबाउट देयर फिल्म्स। जैसे भूमि पेडनेकर थी तो उन्होंने टॉयलेट का जिक्र किया था, विच वाज वेरी सोशली, और मेरे से मैं एक्चुअली मॉडरेटर था उस दिन, तो सबको इंट्रोड्यूस किया था, बट आई वाज वेरी, ही वाज सो काइंड एंड सो इन्फॉर्म्ड अबाउट एवरीबडी that जब सब बाहर निकले तो सबने कहा it was so wonderful that he had something personal to say to everybody, and I think that's a solid leader, that's a solid leader। जब आप किसी से भी मिले, बड़ा हो या छोटा हो, शायद उम्र में या किसी भी चीज़ में, आप उनको वही इज्जत देते हैं जो आप किसी को भी देते हैं। और आई थिंक, और जो होता है कि हम गए थे तो हम मेहमान की तरह हम गए और बहुत इज्जत मिली, एंड एवरीबडी वाज वेरी हैप्पी। दैट वाज अ मीटिंग दैट आई विल ऑलवेज रिमेंबर। ऑफ कोर्स पद्मा में हम मिले थे, बट बहुत लोगों से मुलाकात करनी थी, द ऑनरेबल मिनिस्टर टू मीट, ऑफ कोर्स, एंड उन्होंने हमेशा ये कहा है कि वी आर सच अ ह्यूज सॉफ्ट पावर that sometimes हम खुद नहीं जानते कि what an impact our cinema has on the world, and बहुत बार उन्होंने कहा है, it is his belief, he spoke about it when we met also with the industry, that he spoke about जहाँ वो जाते हैं वो हिंदुस्तानी सिनेमा जो है बहुत ही देश विदेश में everyone talks about it। So I feel like, you know, he has always given our industry, our cinema so much due and respect that we're very grateful। We're very grateful।
लेकिन कई लोग अभी भी ये मानते हैं कि जो 2014 से पहले का दौर था वहाँ पे पद्मा अवार्ड फिक्स हुआ करते थे और उन लोगों को नहीं दिया गया जिन लोगों को दिया जाना चाहिए था। आपको लगता है कि दैट इज ऑल्सो ट्रू टू सर्टेन एक्सटेंट, दैट नाउ पद्मा इज गिवन टू every person from every nook of the corner based on solely merit and not anything else?
Well, I would like to believe that it was given on merit because I received it in the year 2020 and was given to it officially last year because pandemic.
Correct.
You know, Rohan, I'm that kind of person जो हमेशा positive पे ही focus करते हैं. So I wouldn't like to get into what was. I know कि अभी का जो दौर है, I know that very deserving people, I'd like to believe because I have received it and I received it with a lot of compassion and love and reverence to the deciding committees.